Hi everyone, my name is Brenda Casanova and I'll be talking about how I use digital zines in the classroom. This was a unit that we co-created with my co-planning teacher, Miss Danielle Bulante, and I teach 11th and 12th grade English at Roosevelt High School in the Law and Public Service pathway. So I'll be going over what the purpose of our project was, how we had our students complete the digital zine, a few student examples, and then some unit resources that might be helpful when planning a unit like this. So the first thing we had students do was complete a reading on Whose Culture Has Capital, a critical race theory discussion on community cultural wealth. This is what students base their digital zines on after reading the theory on community cultural wealth. Students learned about these 6 different capitals, strengths, or skills that students of color, in particular Latinx students, possess that help them be successful in and out of the classroom, as well as navigate social institutions. And we were really talking about the education system in our mini unit. So the overall purpose of this project is that students begin the year learning about these different assets and strengths that they possess and that their communities possess, to begin already thinking about themselves in a positive asset-based perspective as we begin the year. And our unit is roughly about a week and a half long. We also discuss the importance of seeing all communities through this asset-based perspective and through this lens. And it sets the tone for our classroom because even though I teach an English classroom, I really try to incorporate an ethnic studies framework all year long and just include ethnic studies themes throughout each unit. And so because we'll be talking about different communities that are sometimes different from the one that my students come from, we talk about how important it is to see that other communities also possess these assets and strengths. And it helps to raise students' critical consciousness about the theory, about themselves, so that they feel empowered to share a little bit more about their lived experiences, share about their stories and their cultural identities with each other. And it's really just powerful to see the students begin to own this aspect of their identity and to see them appreciate that about each other. I think also that the digital zine makes for a creative way for students to demonstrate what they've been learning in the classroom, because there are just so many things that students can do with a digital zine, and you can use it with any content. So how is it that students arrive at creating their digital zine? The first step is to front load whatever content you want the students to engage with, and in our class it was the Community Cultural Wealth Theory by Tara J. Yoso. So we had them complete a reading as well as some guided annotations. Before the students begin doing that, we kind of briefly go over what the theory is and what it's about, so that students at least have a little bit of background knowledge on the theory before they begin reading. And this is just the first page of the annotations that we gave them in the reading. And so we included some guided annotations here at the top, some markers for students to begin to exercise certain skills like locating the central idea of the text, using metacognitive markers to help them engage with the text as well. And you can see the highlighted marks that the student left on the reading, as well as some of their comments. And it's really great to see the students begin to acknowledge and see themselves in the text. So the next step is to have the students discuss what they learned about, and this will also help them get a second reading of the text in a group discussion activity. And for this activity, students are working on paraphrasing skills, in which they are translating what they think the original document means. And they're translating in language that a teenager, their crush, or somebody else might be able to break down. And really, it's just for them to break down the language to be more accessible so that anyone can understand it. And they're again working on other skills like identifying the central idea, etc. And here's a student example. These 3 group members all worked to break down what they believe aspirational capital means. And it was really cool to see them make this language really accessible, which shows that they're understanding it. Again, they get a second reading. Afterwards, we all come back to the main room because they complete this in breakout rooms. We come back to the main room, and then one representative from each group tells the whole group what they think this capital was all about. And so students get the second read, and they also hear it again verbally with their peers in the main room. The next step is to introduce the project and a model example. So this is what our project directions looked like. We explained to students the different learning targets that they would be working on, the essential question, which was, how do I possess each of the 6 capitals of community cultural wealth? Why is it important that I reflect on my community's cultural wealth? And we also wanted the students to practice citing and introducing strong evidence from the text, as well as analyzing it and then presenting their information to the class. We offered them a few tutorials, which I'll be going over in the next couple of slides. And then we also included an outline for students and some rubrics so that they can also begin to become familiar with the learning targets for the school year, since again, we do this at the beginning of the year. And we also want them to become familiar with the language from the rubric so that they can begin to take ownership of that as well. Next, I show them the example that I created. So we had students come up with, our cover page, and you can have students design this however you'd like. And I show them on Canva how it is that I created this. I tried to include my own personal photo, which is really cool about Canva, that you can include your personal photos as well. Some evidence from the text, as well as how I believe that I possess this particular capital, which was in this case aspirational capital. The next step is to have students begin brainstorming now that they've seen the model example and the project. And in order to help them brainstorm, we gave them this handout, which allows students to incorporate textual evidence that supports how it is that they believe they possess each of these different capitals. Here they can include photos, quotes, song lyrics, poetry, any kind of visual analysis that will help us see how it is that they possess this cultural capital. Here's an example from a student who talked about how his father really influenced him and helped him achieve or attain aspirational capital. And it's really cool because he begins to point out how in the text she talks about these barriers that might be in the way of him achieving his aspirations, but that his resiliency is still not going to allow him to stop, and that he wants to also give back to his father, who again helped him achieve this aspirational capital. The next step is to introduce Canva to students and then allow them some work time to complete their projects in class. So this Google Slides was made by the amazing Miss Melanie Barajas at our school, and she created this guide for students, to use, which is a great just visual analysis with pictures, and it goes over just how to create different assignments on Canva for students in case they also want to use this for another class. The next thing that we show students is a YouTube tutorial so that they can get, again, another visual analysis on how to use Canva. And then we go ahead and set up their account with them, which is totally free for students to use. And they can use, I had students sign up with their Gmail. They can also use their school email as well. And for the project work time, one strategy that I love to use with students that really allows me to work more one-on-one with them, especially during distance learning, is called tiers of support. And so in a digital learning space, I would split up the students into 3 different breakout rooms and then jump around in the breakout rooms depending on where students need the support. If there's another educator in the space, it's great because then you can both go into, usually we'll go into tier 1 and then the other person will go into tier 2 to help students. And students are the ones that get to choose what breakout room they want to be in. For example, if they need a lot of support developing whatever project you're working on, it means that they might need more one-on-one time with you, and they would be in tier 1. Tier 2 is they feel comfortable working independently on their project. However, they might like frequent check-ins from the educators in the room. And tier 3 is that they feel really comfortable working on their own, but they might still need a few check-ins from you. And the last and final step is to have students present what they learned about and to have students offer appreciations in the classroom. So the presentation flow, for this particular project, we asked other educators to join us in watching students' presentations and to help us evaluate students' digital zines. This was really great because you want to give everybody a chance to present their digital zine, but you might not have a lot of time to present each and every one of them in front of the classroom. And so we had students split out into breakout rooms, and usually about 3 to 4 students, so that each student really has a chance to go in depth on their presentation. And it was great because we invited about 3 additional educators. So my co-planning teacher and I each got to be in a different room, and then the 3 other educators were in other breakout rooms with students. Students presented at least 2 capitals from their zine and their reflection page so that they could share with other students how it is that they possess these capitals, as well as why they think it's important for us to learn about this theory. Afterwards, students take 2 minutes to fill out this presentation form, and on the form they talk about different glows and grows from the student's presentation as well as their own. So students talk about what strengths the student had in their presentation, as well as some things that they offer that might enhance the student's presentation for next time. And they also use the rubric at the very bottom of the presentation form. So again, they can become familiar with the rubric, and they offer other students a score using language from the rubric, and they offer themselves a score using language from the rubric. And in our classroom, we're using the Mastery Learning and Grading scale, so that students, again, on a scale of 1 to 4, how well did the student master this knowledge, and then how were they able to present it to the class. And for the exit slip for that class period, students end off in a community circle, and they offer one thing they learned or appreciated about their community today. And the comments are just really beautiful to see that students really acknowledge students' vulnerability and how courageous they were in sharing about their lived experiences. And here's some student work from the classroom and from the unit. This is a student who reflected on the linguistic capital that they possess, as well as her reflection on cultural wealth. So she talks about how it's important to reflect on cultural wealth because all communities of color possess all kinds of skills that not many people know about, let alone themselves. Even though others outside of my culture may not know or think so, I know that my culture is full of rich knowledge and power. And just in those few sentences, you realized just how powerful this mini unit was with students and helping them, again, just take so much pride and ownership in their cultural identities. And she also, again, just mentions what we wanted students to know and learn, that all communities, right, possess these skills and strengths. And for linguistic capital, she talks about how powerful it is for her to be bilingual, and that she really values the knowledge and advice that her abuelo, her mom, and all her relatives have just passed down to her, which is really great that she's talking about this oral history that gets passed down in her family, and that she can say that now she has, she always had linguistic capital, but now that she's able to name that. And this student reflects on aspirational capital and linguistic capital. And again, students practice citing evidence from the text, including their own original photos. You can begin to see student personalities here as well. And she's able to just feel empowered about the resilience in her aspirational capital, that she is taking all these AP classes that will help her get college credit, and that she's not going to give up no matter what. This student also talked about how she possesses linguistic capital because she was able to translate to a group of parents on campus, and I thought that was really powerful as well, that she's already seeing that as a strength. And finally, this student talked about how it's important to reflect on community cultural wealth because it proves that we have knowledge, skills, dreams we accomplish, and we resist any other forms of oppression, which I thought was a great critique that she's already including in her digital zine. And for familial capital, she really highlights how Yoso talked about that family isn't always blood related. They're also just those immediate ties that we create just outside of our family that are still just as important and significant to who we become as people. And so she talks about how in her community of Boyle Heights, folks that are marginalized and people of color have learned to survive against the forces of capitalism, racism, oppression, and imperialism, which also was really powerful. And thank you so much. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions at all. My email is brenda.casanova@lausd.net. Thank you.